I just want to say, everybody, how you doing? Much love, much love. This is Jonva, me, the legend, baby. I just want to say happy week to everybody, and I want to say thank you again for all the support and love that you've been giving me on this incredible journey around the world. And, we're really excited about our 2023 season at our new home, Doc Entertainment. And like I said, this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for your support. And I have to say that, we have many goodies, lined up, for this upcoming season. And like I said, we like to keep it real. And it's all about being, original and unplugged here. So today we have here a true legend in the house, a friend of the show, my good friend, Mr. Adam Masterson. Adam, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's great. I just want to share before we even start this, Adam, I call, true legend, is a singer, songwriter, producer, and a multi-instrumentalist who brings rock and roll a different type of edge with a pop, with a whole lot of heat on it. So I just want to say I haven't seen that in quite some time. And I'm going to say that, Adam, congratulations on Time Bomb, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's great. As I like to do, I like to introduce my guests to our audience. And before we delve in, I have to say, Adam, that your resume is very interesting. You have a very interesting resume, and I have to say that it's very unique that you do so much. And I'm going to say that your upcoming release, Time Bomb, is a true masterpiece. Great work on that.
Thank you.
Great work. And I have to say that I'm the first to have it on my playlist before it jumps on A Slice of Canada. So don't tell Wanda. Like I said, I'm happy to have first dibs on that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good.
With that, like I said, I'm going to sit here and shotgun, and I want you to share your story and your journey, because you have a very interesting one. And, I had an opportunity to kind of read your bio and check out a few things, and I thought it's fascinating. So I'm going to kind of ride shotgun and give you the platform to share the Adam Masterson journey.
Well, I think the word journey is the right kind of word, because certainly on this last record that I've put out, I had some of the songs sitting around for a while.
Okay.
And then some of the songs emerged during the recordings. And I think what was magical for me was the people that came on board, and how things, maybe they happened in fits and starts, but when they happened really fast. And just the way sort of the bands and ensembles would materialize around the recordings quite quickly. And the tracking was kind of like very fast. Okay, we took a bit of time maybe on overdubs, and there'd be breaks, and then there'd be mixing, and then you'd sit with it for a while. But one thing I learned is, there's whatever you're trying to create, it can hit you on the funny bone when the spirit really, really belts through the thing, and one of the lucky things, or one of the things that I look back on and find most charming about my experience in this, was working with other people, seeing them respond. And that very often they were people sometimes that I just met that day and then got to know during the sessions, so it wasn't like, it's not like a band where we've been rehearsing for 4 years to get to this place. It was, the songs, I put some time into the writing. Songwriting is always a bit of a labor of love. It's got a kind of alchemy to it that's a strange sort of process.
Yeah.
But seeing these songs come to life in that way, for me, as obviously I'm at the mission control in a little bit if you're writing the songs and sing, but you do feel like some sort of bystander in a way. I don't know what analogy you could use, but people say when they become parents, they're obviously their mum and dad and it's their baby, but they watch the thing and they become sort of awestruck by the birth and then this little child growing. And I'd say for me that there were times as well when we were when there was there was frustrations when there'd be down tools for a while. I'd be walking around with the basic tracks of these songs and these recordings thinking, wow, this is really strong. And, you'd have to wait around, you'd have to wait because people weren't available, or, you were trying to raise funds to do a little bit more, real life stuff that can kind of get in the way.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of when it was on, I mean, the tap was running and the water was flowing, and it was as easy as that, quite frankly,
Nice. That's why I said, from what I heard as the final product, the masterpiece, because as a producer myself, I know some of the challenges that you can encounter. And I listened, I said, there's a lot of depth in this project. And I can tell that you really put in the time on this, and my next question is that, I noticed various different vibes on Time Bomb that blend beautifully. And I'm just curious about your writing process, and who were your musical influences growing up?
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, my dad was into music in the car. He'd play music, I'd sit in the back listening to it. And he was, I guess, he wasn't a musician. Mm-hmm. And I've met music fans with record collections that are extensive. I wouldn't put him in that category of fanatic. Well, he was a bit of a fanatic, but he didn't have the vastest record collection ever. But he did have certain philosophies about music, and I think he obviously grew up. He was a teenager in the 60s, and so he wouldn't have been at the gigs that were going on at the time. But I think it was a special. When I think about it now, as before I was born and all the rest of it, the 60s and 70s. But I think we can obsess over the music, but really I think it was a consciousness shift, like an opening, very creative time. And songwriting was obviously, lots of people were doing it, and lots of people were somehow writing these unbelievably good songs.
Yes.
And the audio at the time, the way the technology was, it was at this sort of apex where it was kind of good enough to make these amazing records, but it wasn't going to sort of overwhelm the sort of quite sensitive artist. They could get on the road, but you feel come the 80s with MTV, mm-hmm. you can feel the sort of the businessmen putting two and two together and going, right, we can do, all we got to do is manufacture it, get a boy band in there or a girl band, and they can dance, we'll do the backing tracks, we'll get someone to write the songs. And you just feel that moment of whatever, with people communicating very directly with their own songs, kind of starts to get put down the priority list, so I suppose I was absorbing these records that my parents, particularly my dad, was playing, and I didn't think about being a musician so much, or what have you. I suppose I wanted to play football like any other kid. But looking back now, I was already listening back then as a little kid, like a musician would listen. I was listening to the words. Mm-hmm. The songs were moving me. I was getting caught up in them. I was even aware of the fact that, I think about a song and I wouldn't talk about it with a school friend because it might be a slow ballady sort of song and it didn't have a beat. And it was the words and the story, and it'd be like, nah, it might be a bit, I don't know if my friend's going to be into that stuff. So I just keep it to myself. And it was just a little sort of private world I had. And then I guess I got into being a teenager, and I'd got some cassettes, and I got some tape to tapes, and then I'd take them into my room and I'd listen to them. And they just, like I say, I mean, it wasn't just listening to music. They'd play on my consciousness. I'd go away and think about them. They'd have like a deepening effect upon me, and it would seem to reach back to this place in me that just seemed to go on. It was like an echo. Where did it end? And it had a sort of mysterious, mystical feel to it. And I was, 12, 13. I wasn't really aware of what that kind of was. And I think as an adult now, if I look back, that is kind of, poetry, magic, music, that's what that was. And now I have a deepening appreciation of it. It's still it's still sort of as mysterious as it ever was. But I understand that it's more than just pop music. It says something about your life, and what your life might be, could be, or will be, and we live in a certain point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But songs have this sort of, I think great songs have this sort of psychic energy to them. So if you were to listen to a song at 16 that was very good, you'd feel it in a certain way. And then take like Tangled Up in Blue by Bob Dylan, you'll listen to it and it'll have an effect. I think I heard that when I was 16. Okay. And then at 26, it will mean something different. 36, something. And then 86, you might still be listening. If you get to 96, you might listen to it and have a whole ripening new understanding. But you might wake up and go, do you know what? I just need to hear that song today. It's my 96th birthday and I want to listen to Tangled Up in Blue. And it will mean something completely different. Yet it's the same song, but it's got these layers to it. And I think, I don't know, I've thought about it in my own time, but I think it's like got a psychic energy to it, you know. Sure. So the many selves that dwell within each of us have a moment to breathe. Yeah. And I think if a songwriter really channels that kind of magic, it's more than just a song, a beat and a groove. It's like it's tapping into who we are ways deep down, you know.
I totally agree with you, because you know, that is, you know, I always say your inner purpose. And I find that, you know, especially something that you and I have in common, being you're Brooklyn based. I'm a Brooklyn kid from the Park Slope area. And you play the piano, and I know you try to take a stab at the guitar. I play the piano and the guitar as well. So when we sit down to create, we're not just creating music, we're infusing our life experience. So that's why, like I said, man, I get you, man. Totally get you on a different level. Yeah. And I call it, you know, it's being magical with it, you know?
Yeah, it is. It's a certain kind of magic. And just when you think you know what it is, it changes again and you got to begin at the beginning again. But that might put some people off, but to me, that's the most challenging part of it, but the most sort of, that's the part I never want to give up on it, because you never know where it's going to take you next, you know?
True. And I totally agree with you, man. Now, as a creative, you know, we all had to maneuver through the global pandemic. And I'm just a little curious about you and your process. How did you kind of navigate throughout that time? And, you know, what helpful suggestions that you can offer to our global family of creatives who are sitting here listening to this interview, that they can kind of walk away and kind of put their arms around?
Well, the pandemic was quite an interesting moment. Everyone had their own story. It's a bit like when I listen to grandparents' generation talking about the war, you know, you think, oh man, that must have been the worst thing in the world. And some people had really hard times. And then I'll feel people from that generation have shocked me and said, oh no, that was when I had the greatest fun in the world. You know, they were young and they were up to whatever and they were busy and it was all with being what young people were. But the pandemic was very daunting at first when it came on the news. I was actually moving to where I am now from Crown Heights in Brooklyn to Williamsburg. Okay. And the lease on our place was at the end of March. And for some reason, we thought because of the pandemic, we should move now. And then I was also tracking this. I think the 26th of February, I tracked, I remember my dates. It was Bring Back the Freaks, Wild Wolves were tracked. Okay. We're on the record. And that was a great session. I mean, most of the other stuff was recorded in the UK. Right. And to do it now again in Brooklyn, and to have that equal verb of spirit to it and great people was very exciting. And I really didn't want to hear about this pandemic. And I was hoping that, you know, it would just be one of these things like Ebola they spoke about was going to hit us. And I thought it would move on. And there was talk, you know, in my wife's family about come back to England. Oh man, I gotta track this. And I was doing some overdubs. I think the pianos to Bring Back the Freaks were done on the 14th of March. And I think it was called A Worldwide Pandemic on the 15th. And at that point, I just knew, we were talking in the studio that we were going to lock up and we're all going to go our separate ways. And there was I was talking, I just was going to release an EP in March, and there was going to be a big show in New York in the East Village on mid-April.
Okay.
And I think I had another show in Asbury Park at Danny Clinch's gallery. And I was talking to a publicist, and they were like, Adam, well, I said, I think we're going to go to England. And it was like, well, it might blow over. You can be back in April. We can still do the show. And something in me, once I've said it's not happening, I just knew that it was like the dam busting, I was like, and I was like, once I gave up on it, I went, no, this is going to hit. We better, I don't know what, both our mums are in England. And the irony of it was, I think we wanted to be near our mums if this thing was going to get everybody, and yet we wouldn't be able to see them anyway. Right. So it was just, we sort of homed back there because my wife's English as well. And once we got there, I think my wife got sick along the way. I don't know if she got coronavirus, but it was a strange time. We didn't know if we had it or not. We had that initial moment, and we stayed in an Airbnb in the countryside, deepest countryside, and my kids were very little then. Mm-hmm. And you sort of hits you, and then we moved to a recording studio that was abandoned, which is kind of ideal, isn't it? It's very idyllic recording studio, residential studio, and we stayed there. And that was just the kids. It was just heaven, And I spoke to my mum, and you couldn't drive around in England because it was like right in the first lockdown. And I said, "Great to see you at distance. And if you could grab me my guitar and a couple of reading books I've got in your house, that would be great." So now I had a guitar, and then the studio's got pianos, and then this whole thing happened, which was just I'd watched the news at night about all the stuff that was happening and the terrible things in the hospitals. But then I started just playing music all day in a way that I'd never really played it all day before, because there was no one emailing you. There was nothing to stop the music. It was just other than, playing with my kids a little bit, bath time, bedtime, making them lunch. And then I'd do like 2-hour blocks, and it was in the countryside. And I wrote Time Bomb, the song, in that period. I actually wrote the whole thing, the music. And I wrote another bunch of songs that I haven't recorded yet. Songs that are pretty strong. They're in my live set. But one thing happened, I overdid it with the playing, and I busted up my head. I'd be doing like I'd do 2 hours piano, 2 hours guitar, 2 hours writing. I was doing 6-hour days, which was great. But, if I get in that 2 hours in a day playing, I'm quite happy. But to amp it up to that, and I was pushing it hard. I really wanted it. I thought, right, this is a great opportunity of time. Right. And so for me as a musician, I don't know if there's musicians tuning in that are listening now, but for me, I learned something like, then I couldn't play. When I got back to New York, I couldn't play for like 2 or 3 or 4. And I really freaked out about this. And the hand wasn't getting that much better. And went to see various people. And I met this chiropractor, this kinesiologist, and he said, it's more in your head. And I went to see another pain guy in London. He said, yeah, it's just your brain has all these pain sensors in it, and you're over freaking out about it. So, okay, that's a physical story, but I took it more as a spiritual breakthrough, like just maybe I didn't have true, and I overdid it, so now I take it as like, have a little bit more faith in yourself, take it slowly. You wouldn't push a flower to grow too fast. It's got to have its own thing. So, so any frustrations you might feel as a musician now, and wanting to accelerate things and move things forward, and I think a lot of musicians will feel that way. You just got to be patient with it, and the thing will come. You just got to make yourself available, I think.
Sure.
But I don't think you should one of the guys that played on the record, played drums in Brooklyn on Bring Back the Freaks. Well, great drummer called Charlie Drayton. I got to see him after the pandemic. I told him the story, and he's one of the best drummers out there in the world. He's playing with Dylan now, and Paul Simon has said he's one of the greatest drummers. And I told him this story, and I said, yeah, I was practicing like that. And he looked at me and, ooh, what are you doing? I don't, well, aren't we meant to practice? And it was great in this great musician going, no, you practice a little bit. You don't need to go nuts around the block. I mean, yeah, you hear of people, you hear of classical people playing 8 hours a day. You hear about Hendrix playing all hours of the day. But I've heard of this thing called the Alexander technique. I mean, I'm hypermobile all over my body. You know, I can pull my thumb right back. I can do God knows what. So everyone's got their own. I think certain. You know, besides, I'm a singer and I can tend to sing. You know, through anything.
Right.
I can worst cut. I've actually lost my voice. Had laryngitis.
Oh wow!
On stage and being able to sing. So that's obviously my thing. You know, but certain players, I mean, their hands and they, you know, must be built in a certain way. I mean, as soon as I play the piano, I never took proper lessons, so I tend to do that. So I've got to really take my time to relax into it. So I don't know if that's relevant to anyone from a musical standpoint, but I think the pandemic taught me that in a sort of sense. You know, it had that as a lesson to me as a musician. That I guess that doesn't have much bearing on what was happening in the wider world. But I do feel that actually the pandemic, even though it was a worldwide event, it became very individualized for us all because maybe we all experienced something we just experience in a very individual sense, you know?
I totally agree. And thank you for sharing that. I understand what you mean about over practicing because I'm one like that too, to the point that especially when I'm playing guitar, not so much with the piano because I'm a classically and jazz trained musician, but on the guitar, I tend to overdo it and I can't play anymore. I mean, that's it. That's no more.
It's a very physical instrument, you know, it's a very physical instrument. I think that I was playing it last night and you got to be, you know, you got to work your way into it. You'll work your way up, you know. I think even some of the master guitar players, I don't know if it was Eric Clapton or someone said that they'd got rusty, they hadn't played before a tour and they started playing again and they had to sort of, you know, take it slow, build it up slowly. I think even he had a problem with his hand in the pandemic.
That's right, yeah.
I think we were all freaking out, you know, and things were coming out in our bodies and all this stuff. I think, you know, it's a tricky one for sure.
Yeah, man, definitely. And that's amazing that you took us down that journey and enlighten us because you know we always need that to hear, you know, what another creative is doing that can kind of, you know, bring us closer to, you know, our vision, our journey, and our dream. And with that, you know, before, you know, we come to a close, I always like to have my guest kind of share a quote that, you know what, that means something really to the core of their existence and that, you know what, can go out there and help somebody listening today, tomorrow, and beyond. You can take your time, ponder.
Well, something I read yesterday, I think Nietzsche said it. I might mess the quote up.
Oh, that's okay.
Something like one must have chaos in one's soul to give birth to a dancing star.
Nice.
And I think I put it in one of my songs. I've got this song called Farewell Blue Eyes that I might have found. But chaos is quite a daunting thing, especially when you're growing up as a child. You think of the word chaos meaning sort of Armageddon or everything falling apart. But, you know, maybe as like a writer or creative or a songwriter, you know, the unformed is just chaos flying around, you know. And so songs or art or sculpture is in the chaos is there, and then you sort of bring it out of the chaos into the tangible, you know. So very often when I was younger and I got into this first, it was quite daunting. It was quite, you know, how am I going to, and I knew it was what my life was going to be. I don't know why I knew that, but I knew it was, once I'd found it, I wasn't going to get around it. And then, you know, how do you deal with waiting on the song? You know, how do you deal with not just it not working like clockwork, it not working like it's meant to work? you know, like, so, you know, the businessman goes in to work and he builds his shop and he sells this and he makes that, and it's profit and it's loss, and it all works in this sort of perfectly in tune way. Whereas it's quite chaotic, you know, writing songs and picking them out of the ether. You know,
That's right.
And you go in one day and you feel like you're dynamite. You write a song in 10 minutes and everybody loves it. And then, you know, 10 months can pass by and you're still working on the same next song.
Yeah.
That can be quite disorientating. And I think, you know, I've just learned that it is disorientating. It is chaotic. It is like chaos, but that is where the magic is. And you don't have any choice. You got to trust it, you know, and that's what, once you just let go of it and trust it, whatever that quote was, you birthed a dancing star. There you go. That's it. You got it. You got it.
Well, great. Well, you know, Adam, I just want to say, you know, thank you, you know, again for enlightening us and bringing us into your world of creativity and everything about you that kind of equates to your greatness. You know, I always like to have my fams know where we can follow our guests, because we'll always like to give support. So you kind of just take that platform and tell us, where can we follow Adam Masterson? And so,
well, I'm online on everything, and it's the website is adammasterson.com. You can find me, I think, on Instagram as Adam Masterson Music, and Facebook as Adam Masterson. Yeah, if you do follow me, please get in touch, because I love to hear from people that are, you know, responding to the music and feeling it. And hopefully we'll get to meet up in a gig if you like what you're hearing. I'm playing around the New York area, and when I get back to England, I play around London. And so I've got a gig in London on the 18th of July and Sheffield on the 20th of July at the moment, and I'm hoping to get some tour dates there, and I'm hoping to get some dates, you know, maybe down in New York, maybe in Philly.
Cool.
You're in Boston, is that
I'm in
right?
Boston. I'm in Boston, but I heard your as I was hearing your music, I already heard stuff that I could write for you. So we'll talk that off base, because I always hear music.
Yeah.
The downloads, baby. So
I'd love to get up to Boston. I played there once. I played Paradise Club, which might not be there.
Definitely.
But that was a fun joint, and yeah,
that's cool. Well, Master Adam, I just want to say again, thank you. Definitely, you know, it was long awaiting to have you on the show. I know we're going to be continuing on, because, you know, we're going to be doing some stuff with you with the Slice of Canada, so I'm really excited with that. So a lot of amazing things in 2023. And like I said again, you know, kudos on Time Bomb, because I truly enjoyed it, and like, it's on my playlist, and I'm happy to have it, you know, before a Slice of Canada, because I'm enjoying it right now. But, you know,
I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for playing the music.
Thank you, my friend.